Good morning, Michael. Yes, I'm here at the Cherry Bar in the famously named ACDC Lane, and I'm here with the owner of the bar, James Young, who's had a long history in Australia's music industry and was quite instrumental in getting the lane named. James, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. A little early for me, but nice to be here.
Now, you've had a lot to do with ACDC over the years, and also, as I mentioned, in naming the lane. What sets them apart?
Well, we're talking about the greatest rock and roll band of all time. We claim them as Australian, and I think they're so enduring, their live performance. I always loved the Angus Young comment when he was asked by a cheeky journalist, but haven't you been releasing the same record for 20 years? And he said, correction, 25. So they just stuck to their guns. And they're massive. There are more copies of ACDC's Back in Black record than there are Australians alive. That's how massive the band is. And
do you think that them being added to the National Sound Archive is well due?
Oh, long overdue. I noticed last year we added Kylie Minogue's I Can Be So Lucky. I think ACDC and hard rock were overdue for representation. I think there's about 64 tracks now, and it was about time that rock and roll was represented, and it's a classic choice. I mean, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. It's an anthem, and of course the famous film clip was shot in Swanston Street just down the road.
Now, why is the National Film and Sound Archive important, do you think?
Well, I think it's really important that people in the future can look back and get an insight into the culture of the country. I mean, it's interesting that for the most part we've been grabbing things like sports telecasts and a really wide cross-section of recordings. I think there's a good opportunity for us to delve more into rock and roll, or, I mean, maybe even Australian rules football hasn't been represented yet. I'd love to see, Michael Williamson's call of Jezzalinko, you beauty! As Jezza marks over the top of Jerker Jenkins in the 1970 Grand Final. Ironically, of course, the AFL have chosen as their theme song ACDC's It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll, so it all ties together nicely.
Now, you're very discerning when it comes to your music, obviously. You recently famously knocked back Lady Gaga from having a after-concert show here. Who else would you like to see on the archive?
Oh, good question. I think if we're talking about Australian music, I was pleased this year that we had Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and an unusual selection in the Sydney band The Necks, so that shows that someone is thinking carefully about it. But I imagine you've got Rose Tattoo, you've got The Angels, you've got Daddy Cool and Eagle Rock, little bands like the Sunny Boys, or even great Melbourne band God and the track My Pal. But they seem to be getting it right, and I'm very interested to see what they continue to add.
Now, you've had a lot of famous bands here over the years at the Cherry Bar and here in ACDC Lane. Would you like to see the boys themselves do a gig here one day?
Oh, would I ever? We're all sick and tired of seeing ACDC live in front of 400,000 people at Donington. What the people of Australia want to see is ACDC in ACDC Lane or in the Cherry Bar in front of 200 people. We all want that, don't we, Peter?
Well, James Young, thank you very much for joining us here this morning.
My pleasure. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, folks.